So let's start with this because I always ask songwriters, and you may have answered this before, but hey, it was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Outside of songwriting, how much writing are you doing? Whether it's, kind of journaling or writing stuff here and there, is that ever a part? And it may not be a part of your songwriting process at all, but I'm curious, how much of that do you ever do?
That's a good question. Right now, I am not writing that much. In my weird way of working, it kind of takes, I think I've probably mentioned it to you before. It's like a dumping the shitter kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like you get all this stuff kind of backed up, like, or just like heavy weight on your shoulders sometimes. And you kind of just want to release something to be able to just cleanse, or wipe the board clean in a way. I'm not currently doing as much writing as I should or I could be. I know that. That's an honest answer.
Yeah. So
I need this album to get out.
Right. So do you kind of are there deliberate times when you say, I'm going to write, I'm going to not write, I'm going to write, I'm going to not write? Or is it more, I got to get stuff out there and I need to just get this off my chest kind of thing?
Yeah, it's funny because, we were last time we talked, I was talking to you about how habitual my process was.
Right.
With the pandemic, and I don't want to get too, focused on that, but like just the current times, you'd think that it would lend well to better writing or more output. I have to say that I focused more on covering songs, just as an exercise, to look into other songs and look under the hood of each of someone else's songs instead of my own bull crap all the time. Honestly, I get tired of myself, and I think I got tired of myself in the process of this album, to where I was like, I needed a break from me, honestly. Yeah.
What was well, actually, no, rather than make this a pandemic related question, because I know you've answered those, let me rephrase it this way. There seemed to be this idea that the pandemic gives you all this time to write because, hey, you're not touring, you've got all this time. But honestly, for me, like as a writer, I find that I don't do well with large expanses of time. I do much better with deadlines. And I think, a lot of songwriters tell me the same thing, that when you have all that time, it's not, oh my God, I'm going to write. It's almost like there's so much time. What do you do with it? So I guess, do you write well with large expanses of time, or are you better as a deadline writer?
It would seem that this dead period, where there's so much time on my hands, it would seem that it did not lend well to me writing more or better stuff. I think more than anything, I also kind of fell back into like the malaise of this fucking world. Honestly, I think it kind of messed me up. I think it tripped me up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually, it's a good segue. And I think I was going to ask you at some point, and that's also, I think there was an article in the Washington Post, the theater critic about a year ago said he was looking forward to all the new art that was going to come out because, again, like he said, Shakespeare wrote King Lear during the plague. And so, hey, and, I've talked to many songwriters who it's more of the inability to write under heavy emotional weight. I don't care what that weight is. It's just, the heavy emotional weight, whether it can be something like this or just something in general. So yeah, is it hard to write under heavy emotional weight? Do you need distance from it, or is it easier to write inside of it for anything?
Man, you're way too good at this. So speaking of heavy emotional weight, I mean, I've been going through like the split up of a marriage.
Yeah.
And dealing with, I know you have 4 kids too, don't you?
Yes, we do.
So that was like so heavy on me. Also, not to mention during this COVID shit, trying to finish an album, that heavy emotional weight, you'd think that suffering would lead to good art, right? I mean, that's such a, I think it's a false trope or whatever. I mean, it is a trope, but it's also it's a falsehood. That emotional suffering leads to good art. I found it to be exactly the opposite. I found it to be a bit stifling, honestly.
Mm-hmm. In what sense? Because it's hard. You don't feel like doing anything in general, or
I'm sure there was some of that, like, you know, depression kicks in, you know, the ennui of just being at home and in quarantine and all this shit. Like, I think it all kind of swirled into something that wasn't very productive for me.
Yeah. And then I did one of these dual interviews about a year ago with Patterson Hood and Lilly Hiatt. And I think Lilly Hiatt just said, hey, listen, I write about experiences. And when you don't have experiences, like on the practical perspective, what the hell are you going to write about?
There is that.
Yeah. And is that, I guess, is that a hard part of that for you as well, when you're not around people to think about things to write about?
Maybe so. In revisiting our last interview, I think I talked about, I can't even believe that person that I was, honestly, talking about, like, because back then I was, you know, in a more productive kind of life, and talking about, I mean, I used to go to bars and stuff like that and hang out with people that work construction, people that work in all kinds of lines of work, the medical field, but you hear people's conversations. I think that's what I was talking about before. In 2015, we talked. Maybe there has been a lack of that because of the current world we live in, where you're not hearing other people's stories. And again, I do feel like I'm like tired of myself and my own stories. I didn't have a lack of things to speak on. Mm-hmm. I know that with going through my own things, but I do think there is like a malaise of, I'm tired of hearing about my own stories in a way. At the same time, Ben, to finish this record was during the breakup and stuff like that. And I was able to use personal experience to form some of those stories or to get those songs across the finish line. So there's very real things I'm talking about that were happening to me at that time. I think I just got tired of talking about them.
Yeah. And that's, I bring this up all the time in interviews, but Hemingway once said he could never write about Paris when he was in Paris. And I think whether that's a space or an emotion, right? I mean, to be able to, that some people find the emotions too raw to be able to write about in the immediate moment and do need that distance. But it sounds like you do a pretty good job of writing about those things. You are pretty good about writing about those things in the moment? Or you think you are?
It's hard to tell. I mean, it's so mysterious to me still, Ben. Like, I don't know exactly how to do it correctly, or when I'm doing it good. When, you know what I mean? To get like our first #1 single or whatever on adult alternative, like, I don't know if the song's good at all. I still haven't since 2004 or whatever, when I started this damn thing. So I just don't know. It's still a mystery to me.
Yeah.
I wish I had a better answer.
No, that's great. Hey, listen, I love the new album. I think it's fantastic.
I'm glad to hear
and
that.
It's, I love it. So I was reading actually this, I was just reading, I've been talking a lot about songwriters about the role of sleep in the creative process. And I was just reading this thing about Salvador Dali, the painter, and he had this trick where he found the moment between sleep and wakefulness to be most productive. Like when you're not, in that moment just before you drift off, when you're out for the night. And he had this trick, and it was in this study. It was so fascinating. He would sit in an uncomfortable chair and hold a key in his hand and have underneath him a plate. And so when he dozed off, he'd let go, he'd loosen his grip on the key, it would fall, it would wake him up, and then he'd start to create. He found that to be very productive. I know it's mind-blowing, and I'll send you the article because it's so cool. But a lot of people talk about that moment, not waking up in the middle of the night kind of thing, but in that moment right before. So I'm curious if that ever happens to you. Is that ever part of your process where those ideas, creativity ever, you get some good ideas in that space, whether it's just before sleep or maybe in sleep?
Yes, sir. I can tell you I always regret those nights that I'm falling asleep and I have like an interesting, you know, lyric or something comes to me or an idea comes to me, no matter what it is. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to forget in the morning. This is too important. And I always wake up and can't damn remember.
Yeah.
And that's really, it drives me crazy. It's like, it's okay. Just fall asleep. You're going to remember it. So I often either have to wake up and write the idea down or deal with the regret in the morning. I can also tell you, Ben, that I have like an insomnia problem where I tend to wake up around 3:34 every morning and stay awake until everyone else gets up, like in the world. I love the peacefulness and the still of those hours between 3 and 7, basically, where no one's moving. Mm-hmm. You know, and I don't live with my kids anymore, which is really sad, of course, but you know, it could be like, maybe I have like a friend in bed with me, but it's also the neighbors. No one's moving. Mm-hmm. And that stillness and those moments, I do find good work comes around that time and good ideas come around that time, whether it be for moving forward with my life or musical ideas.
Yeah, I'm the same way. That time when I get up, and if I get up early in the morning, it's almost that feeling of, oh, no one else is doing stuff, but I am.
Yeah. It's beautiful, isn't it?
You feel like getting ahead of the world, you know.
Thank goodness for it.
Yeah.
It's finally quiet. It's really quiet.
Yeah. But here's the deal. I don't feel that same way if I were up from like midnight to 3 because I'm just exhausted. But if I were up from 3 to 6, I'd be incredibly productive, right? Isn't that all right? Dude, can you? Yeah.
This is insane, Ben. Like that last interview we talked about, like I used to I did exactly that. I would stay up until like 3 or 4 in the morning, get a couple hours sleep, and then wake up and take my kids to school. It's funny that with living alone now, I don't want to stay up no more.
Yeah.
I don't, or, you know, or going to woodshed. I got sick of that shit, being alone. I don't find myself that interesting, honestly, to stay up that late. I just get tired. I don't like with this freedom, if you want to call it that, to be able to write whenever I want. It's somehow like I seem to push it away in a way that I didn't when I had a more structured thing. And before, I thought there was such a balance to that. Like, oh, you got to get up, or someone's got the flu now and you have to leave that song and come back to it tomorrow. There was like a really cool and poetic kind of balance there with that. Since I don't have that anymore, I find myself a bit listless, honestly, in those late hours. So now I go to bed.
Yeah. It's also it's a lack of structure. I think we talked about that when you have all that time to do stuff, you know, but if I'd said to you, Ben, I need a song in an hour, would you be able to you'd probably crank it out. You
don't have to finish the question. The answer is yes.
But I create, like as a writer, like I'll create a false deadline for myself. So if I have something to do, like if I have like I don't know, if I'm going out in 2 hours, you know, I'll start something in the 2 hours before that because I know I have a hard stop, right? It's not a false deadline to me. Isn't, oh, I'll start the stopwatch. How much can I do? It's I have to end that thing. And so if I know I have to end it, I always get more done.
You get it. Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. Like, we kind of need things to push us sometimes. I do feel like these past 2 years have just been a bit so open-ended.
Yeah.
That it creates listlessness, at least for me.
That's so interesting you say that, because again, I think the perception among most people is that, come on, man, you got all this time, right? I mean, can't you crank out like 5 albums? And it's like, what else are you doing? And it's the exact opposite. It's I think the emotional side of part of it, you know, I guess separate from it, when you have you do have that much freedom, it can be hard.
Yeah. I don't believe it. At least for me, freedom has not been like the most inspiring attribute here to my life.
And that's another thing is, I've a lot of songwriters talked to me recently about kind of combating that myth of the tortured artist. This idea that, like, Jim James, I interviewed him a couple of years ago, and he told me this about he really wanted to dispel that myth of, the tortured artist, and that you have to be tortured and depressed to create. And he's like, no, man, it's unhealthy. Like, let's get away from that idea that you've got to be that way.
I couldn't agree with him more. As a person who's been through a bit of tortured artistry in the past few years, I haven't found it to be any more successful than being happy.
Yeah. What about the role? I'm also fascinated by the role of movement in the process. I'm amazed by the things that songwriters tell me, whether it's active movement like running or walking or biking or driving, or mundane activities that get them, that something about doing a mundane activity like gardening or showering or something that doesn't require any brain power. I heard vacuuming twice in the past couple of months. That the mundane activities, so it can be a couple of things. There's like the active movement of the running, the walking, stuff like that, or the mundane activity that when you're doing something mundane, it lets your creative spark kind of happen. So I'm curious, how often does that happen in your process? Or do you use that maybe as a part of your process?
Whew, okay. Well, for me, having 4 kids, it's going to Target, isn't it?
That's a mundane activity. I'm doing that later on, by the way. No, I kid you not. I've been told I have to go.
I just got back from TJ Maxx and Lowe's, and I'm going to Target soon. So yeah, the grocery shopping, the things like that. Even though I backed off any sort of social interaction during the COVID stuff, just to like stay safe, right?
Yeah.
And just avoid. I don't mind avoiding people. I really don't. But I still have to go and shop for my girls. I mean, there's a birthday, it seems like every damn week for one, or a Easter or some shit. But there's always groceries to be bought. And I think that might be, like I was saying before, like the old me that would be at a bar. I don't go to bars anymore. I probably haven't in 4 years, like go to bars. Calm down from all that shit. So it became those moments where you can hear people's stories, overhear people talking, or just see people's stories unfold in front of you. That stuff still inspires me like mad. Like I still look at people and I'm baffled. So I think as far as movement goes, no, I wasn't out there running. I mean, I had every opportunity for 2 years to go get in better shape, to move more. I hid completely. I hid from the world.
Yeah.
Besides my kids, I hid from the world.
Yeah. Are there any activities in the house? Like I said, like can be somewhat cleaning. The crazy things are gardening, cleaning, vacuuming, showering, where your brain is that. Do you ever notice that some song ideas actually happen in those times?
Pardon me for being like some cliche dude, but I got a dog.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I ended up getting a dog. I didn't mean to. This dog made me take her. So I think there's the toiling away and raising a pup was one of those type of things. And yes, I take care of my yard. So I do those things, but it's not so much. I mean, and housekeeping is a thing that I do for sure. Yeah. And yard keeping is a thing that I do. But I think that might be a more significant thing that I was focused on, is also like raising a pup.
Yeah. When those song ideas come, do you just have songwriters, you guys all tell me you have voice memos and all those ideas. Are there just, one of them told me, I forgot who it was, that he goes, if any songwriter ever tells you they go back to those voice memos, they're lying. He goes, it was Brian Fallon. He goes, they're lying. He goes, I've all those. I've never once gone back to them. Now, everyone else has told me they go back to them all the time, but do you go back? Yeah. You don't go back to them, but
I
they're
don't,
there.
and I'm mortified to think of what my children are going to find on my phones. Like if I die, like when I die, they're gonna be like, "Oh my God, this guy was out of his mind, and he didn't use any of this shit." I don't go back.
You know, see, all right, you're the second person. He will be validated. But where are you storing all those? You've got to have lyric ideas and riffs and melodies and stuff like that. Are you when they come to you, are you storing them anywhere?
Unfortunately, I also I ran into a problem with my storage options. I forgot my cloud password. They locked me out. So I'm missing all of my demos. Certain phones have, got dropped in water or broken, and I can't retrieve their data. They have to fly away into the air.
Yeah,
and that's okay. There's some solace there that I find peaceful. Honestly, that's I don't have to chronicle every single damn fucking idea. I'm allowed to live and let these ideas live in the ether and let them come to me. And if they stick, they stick. If they don't, well, sorry, but shit. I mean, you can't cry over spilled milk like that anyway, right? I mean, you just got to let it float away if that's what they're supposed to do. They'll come back if they want to.
It's so funny. I had said this to someone that every songwriter said kind of what you were doing. It's this motion of they always do this. The songs are coming to them in the air. They're grabbing them. And I said, no songwriter has ever said to me, yeah, that song was just sitting there on the ground and I picked it up. They're always coming out of the air. I don't know why that is. They're never, it was on the ground and I picked it up. Yeah, it's always this motion. Yeah, it's so funny.
It does feel like we're like sparring partners with God sometimes, or just the folks that we see around us, humanity, right? I mean, we're lucky if they come to us, I think. And what the hell do we even know? We don't really know what's happening.
Yeah.
This is how we perceive it.
Yeah.
We feel like we're being, kind of, it's a barrage of feelings and ideas and things like that sometimes. And I mean, all people do, not just songwriters.
Yeah.
I think we're all kind of, especially in this day and age where there's so much information being thrown at you. We're all kind of just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you often get inspired? I'll pull in, I think it was Hemingway that also said all writers should go to art galleries to get inspired. So how often do you get inspired? Maybe not by art galleries, but at least by other types of art for your songs?
Good question, Ben. I don't find that visual art is exactly like a trigger for me to be inspired. But I mean, everything inspires me. So I'm not sure, I bet I'll kick myself if I say that out loud. I already am. Everything, I think conversations are more the thing that really, other people's stories, other people's lives really inspire me. Because I always want to write things that are a bit more universal, that I try to stay away from myself too much even. So for me, it's conversations. Yeah.
On the new album, is there a song that stands out as being flat out easiest? Didn't take you a lot of time that you could write, that was just, you did in one sitting that was, and then I guess a two-parter, which was there a song that stands out as being the easiest? And there was one that maybe was really hard to write that you wanted to give up on, but you said, I just got to finish this through, even though it probably took longer than it should have?
Both good questions. It's a bit maybe lazy of me, but I know this. This song is called "In the Hard Times" on the new album.
Yeah,
I wrote it. I wrote it the night I was at the studio with my friend Wolfie, and he kind of played me a little riff or whatever. It was like, hell yeah, what the hell you got going on? Let's go there. And much like on our second album, Ode to the LRC, this song that came to me in one day, those songs that come to you in one sitting, you just think whatever deity, was smiling down on you. It came quick. The words came quick. The melody came quick. The arrangement came quick. I always just thank my lucky stars for any song like that. So that would be that easy. With the ones that like kicked and screamed, In Need of Repair kicked and screamed. I had that. Yeah, I had that song. I had the instrumental done forever. I had a totally different melody about it, different kind of words, whole different approach to it. And I was lucky that Ryan from our band, Ryan Monroe, and Jason Lytle from Granddaddy, and also helped us produce this record and did produce the entirety of the last one. They kind of helped me see a different wrinkle in there where I could take it, that opened up my eyes a bit to where I could take the narrative. And it kicked and screamed all the way.
I love that, kicking and screaming. I love that. I've never heard but it's perfect. I've never heard a songwriter say that, but it's like a perfect way to describe those songs.
You know, Ben, on that last record we had, Why Are You Okay? There's a song called Solemn Oath. And it says, this one kicks like a mule. And I'm talking about the song itself. And
That's great.
It's like, this fucker doesn't want to be done.
Well, yeah. Can you give up on song? I mean, I can't give up on things. Like, even if I'm like with books, like I can start the shittiest book, but I got to finish it. And I wish I was the kind of person that could say, no, I'm not going to finish this, but I always have to. So with songs, are you able to give up on them and say, you know what, it's just not meant to be, or do you have to finish it through?
They haunt me. They haunt me. Even those, like we're talking about, you know, data gets erased, things go away. Those, not just phone notes, you know what I mean? But ideas, and song ideas, they haunt me. I still think of them. And the ones that I can remember, they haunt me forever. And I don't intend to let them slip away still.
So they may have a life at some point. You just can't give up on them. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It does seem like every songwriter has a story about some riff on the latest album that was from like 15 years ago or something like that they just finally found a home for. Anything like that on this album?
God, which didn't? Like, so many did. Like, so many were like those, exactly what we're talking about, that I'm like, I need to bring this thing back. I'm trying to find the right one. God, I need a physical copy of the record soon, because I don't listen to our shit. I'm trying to think what the album is. I can tell you this, Ben. When I started trying to get this album going, it was right after the last record had come out. And I'm like, I went down to my friend's studio. It wasn't a studio. It's a storage shed, an actual storage shed. The person next to him is a wine delivery person. And there's no like real wall in between the two. There's a fence, but not a real wall. So you hear them like loading up wine and all this shit. I had lights and crutch back then. I was like, I want to go ahead and get this album rolling. So I went to my friend's storage shed and started to get those things going. I knew both those songs were something. The fact they made it 5 years later, I'm sure there's better examples maybe on the record, but I don't remember what the record is. But I know that those were kind of the harbinger of well, not only setting a base for the record, but just the whole entire tone of the narrative that I was spinning.
Yeah. I forgot what you said in the last time, but are you a pen and paper person or a computer person when it comes to lyrics? There you go. That's actually the what it gets written on. Not Sharpies. That's it. Oh, I love the visual cues. So Sharpies are pretty permanent. So why I don't hear Sharpies very often, because I imagine Sharpies are kind of rough. They're not smooth, but why do you like Sharpies so much? That's great.
I think there's something about also the set list person that I am. Like, I love that Band of Horses, we have evolving set lists every night. I do research into where we played last time we were in said town. What town are you in?
Right outside of DC. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're playing in DC tonight. I'm going to look up on Setlist FM how many shows we've played there in the past, 10-year span. I'm going to look up what we played, what we started with, what songs, the deep cuts we played. I think it stems from there. I'm always writing set lists because really Band of Horses is also like a big touring band.
Yeah.
And I find a lot of creativity in that, in making set lists and providing our fans, our showgoers, with a new experience, at least a differing experience every time they see us. So it's special. I think that breeds, it breeds, well, more, folks that come back for one, but also travel with the band sometimes because they know they're going to get a different show. But I think it stems from there that I'm always writing on a damn piece of printer paper with a Sharpie, a good sharp Sharpie. I make sure I put my caps back on. I like them wet and I like them sharp. And I find that writing is smooth. I find it really smooth.
But to me, like that's a ritual. Like I have rituals too. Like I never write and revise in the same chair. That's a ritual. I don't know why it's a ritual, but it's a ritual. But it gives me confidence to know that, oh, it's happened before. So you have that ritual. Does that give you confidence, right? No, like, because some songwriters say to me, oh, I don't care. I'll write on anything. I don't care what it is. I can write on it. But you just showed me two very specific things that, to me, that's like, it works there, right?
I'm comfortable there.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. I'm just comfortable there. But I got to tell you, recently, I also went back to an exercise that I think I learned from maybe something I heard about Neil Young. Because when people are around, sometimes you don't want them to see your work. And I'm a newspaper. I love print media. I love the newspaper. I think we talked about, I love crosswords, things like that. But to write, after I've read the paper, I'll write on the newspaper opposite of the way the print is going down. I'll go the opposite way. And it jumbles up the words. So it's really hard for the naked eye to look over and see what you're really talking about. It's really confusing to the eye. So I've started going back to that a little bit because I felt like maybe I needed a little bit of autonomy.
And I'm guessing those lyrics are all over, because that's unlined paper, man. Those lyrics are probably all over the place on that paper. Or are they in somewhat of linear form or no?
There's notes about what things I need to go shopping for, Ben. There's all kinds of, there's quotes that I either heard or read during the day that I wouldn't remember. And again, sometimes those things just get thrown out.
Yeah.
It's strange. It's strange to care so much to write things down just to let them go away. But there's some part of us, I believe, that wants to make sure that it's noted. Yeah.
So besides the print media, how much reading do you get to do? Books, stuff like that, or is he just a print media kind of guy?
I love books. It's a bit shameful, just like the writing more songs during this pandemic thing. I wish I read more books. I wish I could say that it led me to read more books. I think, well, maybe I was going through a pretty hard time. I know I was.
Yeah.
And I found solace in different mediums like movies and things like that, and music and sports, honestly, and raising a dog. I wish I read more books, but I have too many books and I need to get back to it. It's shameful in a way. I'm a bit ashamed that with all the opportunity that was provided with this lockdown bullshit, I should have been more productive.
Yeah. You said crosswords, though. I don't hear crosswords very often. So what are the crosswords? That's probably good for creativity, though, isn't it? I mean, just kind of like it's keeping you sharp, I would imagine, right?
Just like a conversation you overhear. We talked about. It's the look of a word, the thought of a different word that you hadn't thought about, or a turn of phrase that you hadn't thought about that would naturally come to you. It's that it gets to be in front of you as it otherwise wouldn't have been. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
And words are just beautiful. I love words, and I love facts, and I love the history of who we are. So there's a lot to be gleaned from humanity there.